and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm Daily Dave, and I'm joined by Daily Riley. How are you doing, Riley? You feel better?
A bit better, but as you can probably hear, not 100%.
You sound very robust and manly. And Daily Minna. How are you doing, Minna?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. You're better than Riley?
I am sorry to say I am.
Yeah, no, you always think you're better than Riley. I know. I sense the subtext.
It's a problem.
It's a
Created a
problem.
lot of tension.
Yeah, this young upstart. What does she think? Anyway. Riley, give us a start. I looked at the list of the stories she sent. They all irritated me. So let's see where this goes.
Oh, that's good. It's a good way to start the day.
Yeah, really.
Israel has slightly eased its blockade on Gaza, allowing minimal food and medical aid into the territory after over 2 months of total import restrictions. The move comes amid international pressure and a deepening humanitarian crisis, with famine looming and nearly 500,000 Palestinians at risk of starvation. Despite the opening, only a handful of aid trucks have entered, far below what is needed, and aid groups have rejected Israel's new U.S.-backed distribution as inadequate and unethical. Critics warn that the blockade, mass displacement, and Israel's stated plans for Gaza amount to violations of international law.
They're not just critics who say that. It is a violation of international law. It's obscene. Okay? What they've been doing there since October 8th is obscene. What Hamas did to Israeli civilians was obscene. But we are up now, just released yesterday was a list of 53,000 people who died in Gaza. Now you've got 500,000 to 1 million on the verge of starvation. There's a report out today that says that if Israel does not increase food shipments immediately, and by immediately I mean right now, 14,000 children will starve to death in the next 2 days. So this is disgusting. It is made more disgusting by the fact that a top Israeli official yesterday said, we're just going to provide enough food to keep the international community off our backs. I'm paraphrasing. In other words, they're not doing it because it's the right thing to do. They're not doing it because the people are in need. They're not doing it out of any sense of obligation to international laws or decency. They're doing it to keep cover, to allow them to proceed with an effort to raise Gaza completely to the ground and to push out the Palestinians and put the territory under Israeli control. It's one of the great tragedies of our time, on a par what's going on with this in the Horn of Africa, on a par with what was going on in Central Asia at the turn of this century, on a par with what the Russians have done. And in many cases, because it is so calculated, because the international community was right there with aid, because it was covered and people knew about it, in many ways, it's among the very, very worst of the crimes against humanity that any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. And the United States of America, the Biden administration, and in the Trump administration is supporting what Israel is doing, providing aid, providing weapons, enabling them to pursue this policy, which is an abomination. And the law in the United States says we're not allowed to provide aid to countries that violate human rights and commit war crimes. And we should not. But I'll tell you what, I bet sometime soon, Donald Trump strikes a deal with Russia to lift sanctions and stimulate economic interaction with Russia, even as it continues to commit war crimes in Ukraine. The United States is now on the side, and I'm sorry to say it, but on a bipartisan basis, of supporting war criminals. Should require each of us to do some introspection and to intervene in the system and let our feelings be known any way we can.
The Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to end temporary protected status for roughly 350,000 Venezuelans who received protections in 2023, potentially leading to imminent deportations. The decision does not affect the 2021 temporary protected status group for now, but signals they may lose protections later this year. Despite the U.S. government warning against travel to Venezuela, the administration argues conditions have improved enough to justify ending the program.
Imagine you were one of these 350,000 Venezuelans. You woke up yesterday morning and you thought, I'm in America, I'm legal, I'm protected, I'm trying to make America a better country, I'm contributing to my community. I don't want to go back to Venezuela. Venezuela didn't change in the day. America did. And when they went to bed last night, they were no longer protected. They were illegal. It is appalling. And it's particularly shocking in an administration, for example, that features somebody like Marco Rubio, who was one of the biggest critics of the Maduro regime out there. But of course, Rubio has changed his position on almost every issue of apparent or feigned conviction on which he used to run, which he used to identify himself with. This is appalling, and we have to watch this closely, because if the administration starts to round up and send these people back to Venezuela, it'll be just one more atrocity and a self-inflicted wound to America's reputation as a country that embraces refugees, as international law requires we do. Riley?
Representative LaMonica McIver of New Jersey has been charged with assaulting law enforcement officers during a protest outside an ICE detention facility on May 9th. Acting U.S. Attorney Alina Habba stated McIver interfered with officers despite efforts to resolve the matter was without charges, while DHS Secretary Kristi Noem emphasized that no one is above the law. McIver and her supporters, including Newark Mayor Ras Baraka and top House Democrats, claim the charges are politically motivated and lack credible evidence. The charges against Baraka were dropped, and Democratic leaders have pledged to fight what they describe as an abuse of power.
It is certainly an abuse of power. Cory Booker had a good thread on this I saw in Blue Sky, talking about how she was simply going about her responsibilities. It's a matter of law in the United States that Congress people have the ability to go and inspect facilities like this. The facility, by the way, which was set up illegally by the Trump administration, and she was following through on her responsibilities. Furthermore, after the so-called incident, which is being trumped up as a way of persecuting political opponents, the people in the facility invited the Congresswoman back. So clearly there was no great infraction here. Quite the contrary. It was a Congresswoman doing her duty to examine the administration breaking the law. Alina Habba saying no one in America is above the law, when she's devoted the past 4 years to making sure that Donald Trump did not get held accountable for his crimes, badly, I might add, has a lot of chutzpah. And so too, of course, does Kristi Noem. This is a test. It is the administration testing to see how it can twist and abuse the law in order to prosecute its opponents, and this is just as important, whether they're convicted or not, send a message to people that if you mess with the administration, you will be prosecuted. And that has a chilling effect, and that's what they want. They want to use every tool they've got to push back on criticism. As it happens, the way they're doing it is directly out of the pages of the authoritarian playbook.
The Trump administration has launched a new civil rights fraud initiative aimed at investigating federally funded universities for alleged violations of civil law related to diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. The initiative will use the False Claims Act to target institutions according to the DOJ, promote anti-Semitism or violate students' civil rights while receiving federal funds. This move escalates ongoing tensions between the administration and elite universities like Harvard, which is already suing the government over canceled federal grants.
Look, I think we need to stop and remember here that DEI programs are a direct result of laws passed in the United States in order to ensure everybody within this country is treated equitably. And they are not a violation of anything, quite the contrary. They are exactly the programs that one should expect in a democratic society and that one finds in democratic societies around the world. The DEI, the claim that they're looking for anti-Semitism is, of course, absurd, coming from a president who kept a book of Hitler's speeches by his bed, who defended white supremacists and Nazis, and after Charlottesville said there were good people on both sides, who has an administration full of people who backed, supported, or were outspoken in favor of white supremacists. And in fact, we need to see this movement for what it is. It is a movement to push back on the gains made as our society became more equitable over the course of the past 50 years, and to bring us back to a Jim Crow-like mentality where the government is working to promote the interests of one group within society. And that group is white Christian males. And I think it's important that we watch this, call it out for what it is, and recognize that this is a profound threat to academic freedom, will weaken our universities, will make it so that people do not attend universities in the United States anymore, and will also produce countless court battles at huge expense. But all of it, the immigration laws, all of this comes out of the fevered mind of the president's most important advisor, Stephen Miller, who is a sociopath, who is a racist, who is trying to turn the clock back to a much darker period in America's history. And one of the reasons we call these things up, one of the reasons we flag them, is because they are so dangerous. Riley.
President Trump signed the Take It Down Act into law, criminalizing the non-consensual online sharing of real or AI-generated sexually explicit images and videos. The law imposes mandatory restitution and penalties, including prison and fines, and requires websites to remove such content within 48 hours of a victim's request. Championed by First Lady Melania Trump, the legislation aims to protect especially young people from the harmful impact of deepfakes and online exploitation. Passed with broad bipartisan support, the law reflects growing concern over the misuse of AI and social media to violate personal privacy and dignity.
Do you really think this was championed by First Lady Melania Trump? Riley, do you?
I believe they say it was. I don't know how much she actually had to do with it.
Do you think she knows anything about it? I don't. I understand why they associated her with this. Obviously, this is, it's a good thing. We need to avoid AI abuses. I think we have seen other forms of obscene doctoring of AI, to promote tensions in our society, to indict, people for things they didn't do. And we're going to see more of that. And this doesn't address that. And I was like watching last night, some very important documentary. Okay, it was Law and Order SVU, but it's what's look. I can't be doing this stuff all day long. It's very stressful. And my wife really likes to watch a murder to go relax at night. That's the kind, that makes her relax. Anyway, so I'm watching Law and Order SVU, and there was some kind of video shown as proof of a crime. And I thought the proliferation of deep fakes is actually a double-edged sword, because people will, and I think they're already starting to, when there is an incriminating video, say, oh, it's just not real. It's a deep fake. And people will buy that. And the forensic work that needs to be done to determine whether it's a deep fake or not will not resonate with the crowd. And so what the consequence of deep fakes, and we are entering the era of deep fakes, this is just one small bill adjusting one small part of it. The consequence of this era is nobody's going to know what to believe. And that is precisely what authoritarians want, because clearly truth is their enemy. If they're corrupt, if they're taking money from the poor and giving it to the rich, if they're supporting America's enemies versus our allies, if they're doing things that are destructive to our standing, they don't want the truth. They want to come up with a story that they can sell, and usually that story is grounded in lies. And in the world we're entering, of AI hallucinations, of deep fakes, of thousands and thousands and thousands of media outlets with no editorial controls, of the decline of the media outlets that we trusted. And I direct your attention to the recent stories about CBS and the efforts of the owners there to censor what CBS News, once the crown jewel of all news organizations, present. We're in an era in which truth is going to be a rare commodity and hard to determine. We're here to do our little part in helping out, trying to sort through all of that. I hope all of you are talking to your kids, talking to your families, talking to your colleagues about ways to become more critical consumers of information to sort out what's real and what's not real. Anyway, that's what we do here. And you'll see us here every morning on the DSR Daily. You can visit with us on Deep State Radio, on Words Matter, on Scylla Consciousness, on AI Energy and Climate, on our special Deep Dive podcasts, and also on the podcast that we produce with the New Republic, the Daily Blast, to get truth. That's what we're about. And if you support that and you want to support a small organization when the big ones are failing, all you have to do is go to the DSR network, click on membership, contribute what you can, and help us continue on in what we're doing. We're growing every day, and we're grateful for that. We'd like to see our support grow proportionally. Thank you very much. Riley, feel better. Hydrate, tea with honey.
Yep, I'm way ahead of you.
Good. Get some sunshine. Minute, stay away from Riley. He's infectious. And we don't know which direction this disease will turn.
Good advice.
I shouldn't have swum in Rock Creek Park. It was a terrible idea.
Well,
I thought if it was good enough for RFK Jr., it was good enough for me. But
yeah,
the wool's been pulled from my eyes. That's for sure.
Well, the less you believe that he says, the better. That is for darn sure. And I didn't even, with this whole truth rant, I didn't even get into what they're doing with science and medicine, which is horrific. Anyway, there'll be plenty of that for us to discuss in the days ahead. We hope you'll join us. Until then, bye-bye.